Yamamoto vs. Iwa. We see glimpses of their past battle where the Shinigamis eliminated the Quincy's. Yamamoto uses his Bankai, Sanka no Touch, and cancels out Hitsugaya's Taiguren Hyorin-maru, which was being used by one of the Stern Ridders. Sanka no Touch absorbs all the flames of Yamamoto into his Sanpak too, and is felt throughout the Soul Society. There are four abilities with Yamamoto's Bankai. First is that it can destroy and incinerate everything that his blade touches. Second, his spiritual pressure becomes like a cloak of flames that can't be touched. Third is that he can summon an undead army composed of everyone he killed with his Sanpaku. In this case, he summoned the corpses of the dead Quincy's that he eliminated in the war before with Yuhabak. Fourth is a final slash that can cut through anything and has severed Yuhabak in half. As Yamamoto deactivated his Bankai to save Soul Society from being destroyed, we find out that he wasn't fighting Yuhabak and instead was fighting Stern Ritter Y, yourself, Lloyd, which was only copying Yuhabak. The real Yuhabak appears and explains that he spoke to Aizen, but Aizen refused to join with the Quincy's. Yamamoto tries to activate his Bankai once again, but Iwa immediately stole it. The next we see of Yamamoto was him being cut in half, dead. And as Yamamoto's dead corpse still wants to stop Yuhabak, Yuhabak lectures Yamamoto of how peace actually made him much weaker. He was no longer the man that would sacrifice his own subordinates for his victory. He was no longer a demon. He had things that he wanted to fight for. Then, Ichigo finally breaks free from Kyogi Opi's jail with the help of the Shinigamis from Serete. Ichigo immediately gets attacked by one of the Quincy's, but he immediately kills him, and his spiritual pressure is felt throughout Soul Society by Iwa and the Stern Ridders. He takes to the sky and immediately looks for Rukia and Renji, checking their spiritual pressure, until he flashbacks to where Byakuya is. Byakuya, covered in blood, asks about Renji and Rukia and tells Ichigo that he doesn't have much time left. Byakuya apologizes for his inability to protect everyone in Soul Society, and with tears and blood running down his face, Byakuya begs Ichigo to save Soul Society. Ichigo immediately finds Yuhabak and throws Sangetsu in front of the king of Quincy's, and begins to fight him. He put up a great fight, but he could not win. Yuhabak cuts his neck and sees the mark of Bloodfin, a technique that toughens the body of the Quincy's to prevent damage. Yuhabak finally reveals to Ichigo the reason why he managed to break free from Opi's prison was not because of the Shinigamis, it was because Opi's jail can only contain enemies, revealing that Ichigo is in fact a Quincy. Yuhabak, before dealing the final blow to kill Ichigo, runs out of time and energy, as he was tricked by Aizen's Bankai. Ichigo refused to let Yuhabak leave and attacked him with everything he has left, as Hashwall drew his sword and cut Tensai Sangetsu in half, leaving Ichigo with a broken Bankai. The fight between Iwak and Yamamoto was incredibly well animated, especially Yamamoto's flames. His Bankai looks so good, it was really like it was the steel was burning. And even in during the deactivation of the Bankai it was so clean, the animation was so clean as charred um the charred sword the char around the sword suddenly vanishes into thin air and reveals the Shikai pack. So Overall, I can't say anything about the fight itself. It's very well choreographed. Um, I guess one comment would be the third ability of Zankanoe Touch, where Yamamoto summons undeads, and the undeads doesn't really do much. I think it's more of a psychological move. I know it's sort of out of place, I guess, in reference to the other three abilities of Zankanoe Touch. And yeah, I agree, but I think it's still pretty cool. It looks badass, and you already have basically the other three abilities all destroys anything that comes towards Yamamoto. So having one ability where it's a more of a psychological attack and more defensive in a way is actually really good. I mean, the second ability is the actual one for defense, the Cloak of Flames, but let's be honest, that's also an attack. When you get too close to it, you burn. So yeah, I would say that the fight actually reminds me of Hunter x Hunter, where Netero loses to or lost to Meruem. It felt sad. It felt the viewers really feel the desperation of Soul Society in this case. That their greatest, the one who was actually never defeated before, has lost. So yes, and then we see Yamamoto cut in half fully in the next episode, with Yohabak seemingly mocking his corpse as Yamamoto's corpse is still somehow trying to stop Yohabak. It's really a very solemn moment. Ichigo finally breaks free of OP's jail, which was really cool. He immediately killed one Stern Ritter. It was amazing. Immediately tried to sense Renji and Rukia's spiritual pressure, checking if they're still alive, if they're still breathing. Then he goes to Byakuya, and Byakuya, the sight of Byakuya is something that I never wanted to see. Um, with Byakuya being covered in blood and actually crying, um, begging Ichigo to help. I never expected to see Byakuya beg or cry. It's really a powerful scene for someone who seemingly has perfected um, their fighting skills to admit that it wasn't really enough, that he failed. That's a very big deal for Byakuya, and him being covered in blood in his last breath, still crying that he couldn't save everyone, that he couldn't fight for Rukia or Renji anymore, begging Ichigo to save to save Soul Society. The whole scene reminds me of Itachi's death in Naruto. It felt like that, like it's something that you didn't really want to see. It hurts to see it, and it's just very, very sad. Um, Ichigo, out of pure rage, actually throws Tensai Sangetsu in front of Yubak, which I've never actually seen. I don't remember Ichigo ever throwing his Bankai before. You never really get to see any of the captains throw their Bankai before, but he was so mad he just threw Tensai Sangetsu, and because he knew that his Bankai couldn't be stolen, so yeah. But still, it's meant to show Ichigo's pure rage at that moment, that he's really just going wild now, that because of everything that happened in Soul Society. So Ichigo and Yobak fight. It's an amazing fight, very short-lived, but it's so cool, and I'm really going to watch this again tomorrow. There's so much happened. It's so condensed in, like, I think it was the fight was less than a minute, but it was so cool. It it really showed how powerful both Ichigo and Yobak is, and how Yuhabak still overpowers Ichigo, even with everything Ichigo has. Then the reveal of Blood Vein was really cool. It was, you know, I knew about it from the manga, but yeah, it was very cool to see it animated, and even Ichigo doesn't know what Yuhabak was talking about when he was mentioning Blue Fin. And then we find out that Ichigo actually broke out of OP's jail because he's based technically not an enemy. So Ichigo, the man, the Soul Reaper, the Hollow, is also a Quincy. So yeah, Ichigo broke out of OP's jail once his Ryatsu finally sort of remembers, as Yuhabak describes it. His Ryatsu remembered that his Ichigo is also part Quincy. So yeah, Ichigo tries to fight Yuhabak again. Then Yuhabak decides to kill Ichigo because he couldn't subdue him, and I think he realized that Ichigo will never work for him. So he tried to kill him. However, apparently, Yuhabak was tricked by Aizen's Bankai, and his perception of time was warped. He spent more time with Aizen than he thought, so he ran out of time. Apparently, Yuhabak has to be at a certain place to sort of recharge. I think he's not at full power, which is insane. Yeah, so he ran out of time and energy. He could no longer finish Ichigo, so they're going back to where they were before they invaded Soul Society. Ichigo then stands up and tries his best again to stop Yuhabak from leaving and attacks him. However, Ashfall drew his sword and cut Tensai Sangetsu in half, and Ichigo is left speechless. Yuhabak and Hashwalt left through the portal they opened, leaving Ichigo with a broken Bankai, and as we all know, once a Bankai is broken, it could never really be pieced back together, or at least it won't be as powerful anymore. So, a lot of things happened in this episode, and it's very cool. So, now we know Ichigo is also part Quincy. He's basically one of everything. With the images shown, Yuhabak was alluding that Ichigo's mother was actually a Quincy, and he was actually trying to reach him to get Ichigo back to the Quincy side, even before, which hopefully gets discussed further in the anime. 'Cause that's very cool. Also, I hope Ichigo does master Blue Fin. I think it's a very cool technique, very cool defensive technique, especially because Ichigo is really a close range fighter. I know a lot. I know that they all use swords, but Ichigo even likes to fire up Getsuga Tensho while his blade is clashing with his enemies that up close. So I think Blue Fin is really would be really useful to him.